Hi there, this is Justin. In this video, I'm going to be talking about ETL. If you're new to the analytics space, you might have heard this term being thrown around. My goal is that by the end of this video, you will understand this term. So ETL is an acronym that stands for Extract, Transform, and Load. So the first part to ETL is extract. So let's talk about that piece for a second. I'm just going to jump to this diagram to show you what could be quite a typical BI stack that a company will have in place. What I mean by that is the different tools that are interconnected to allow the business to um, report on its data. And in such a stack, you will have a central data warehouse or data lake. Now, most companies are going to have many different sources of data. So in this example, from the Project BI website, my agency, we serve e-commerce businesses. We might have Shopify, Amazon, Facebook ads, Google ads, TikTok ads, Klaviyo, which is an email service provider, Georges, which is for support tickets, etc. So many different sources. And we need to get the data that is generated within these sources out. So that's the extract part. You need to extract the data out and then essentially load it into the warehouse. So that's the first two, that's two out of the three pieces, extract and load. So we're extracting out of the source and we're loading within the warehouse. Where things get a bit more technical is on the transform side. So I just want to show you if I jump to um, the support documentation for the Shopify API. So basically, the way data is extracted out of sources is via an API. So if I'm an ETL provider, I'm going to write code that can communicate with different API endpoints and use those to extract the data. So here's an example of a document that covers the excuse me, the process to get a list of orders from Shopify via their API. And I'm not a developer, but essentially you would, if you were a developer, you would come in here, read these documentation, and be able to write a script, a process that can communicate to the API endpoint and extract the data. And why I wanted to show you this is because on the left-hand side here, we have an example of an output of this endpoint, this GET request. And we see the data here for a specific order, right? So we see the ID over here of an order, and we get all this information on this order. But I want you to notice up here, the format that we're going to get it is in JSON. Not the name JSON, but the coding language or format JSON. Okay. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because the transform part is that if my script is going to get the data back in from the source in JSON format, I need to transform it so I can then push it into my warehouse. So that's the middle piece, the transformation part. So essentially, it's a three-step process. I need to extract the data, I need to transform it, take it from JSON, and essentially push it through. So it lands in my data warehouse in a format that's easy to work with. Some warehouses can actually receive JSON data, but you then, as an analyst, will have to write, either write scripts or more complex SQL to break it up. So what the ETL providers do is they transform that raw JSON data so that it can be then loaded into the warehouse. So that's fundamentally what ETL is. It's extract, transform, and load moving data from a source into a data warehouse, and transforming it along the way so that it lands in the warehouse in the right structure and layout, right? We want our rows and columns so that we can then go ahead and use SQL to do whatever we want. So I just want to cover 4 examples of ETL providers because now that you hopefully understand the concept of ETL, and you want to go ahead and set up analytics for your startup, um, how would you do this? So there's really 2 ways to do this. Either you, as I explained in the example with Shopify orders, you as a developer, or by bringing in a friend or hiring a developer, can actually build your own ETL, right? So you go in, you set up a server, you write the code, and you have a process which will then run and extract the data yourself. This is obviously expensive, complicated. You need to know how to write code and understand software development, or hire someone that can, and that's typically expensive. The second option is to just go with a out of the box solution, essentially a SaaS product, software as a service product, which does it for you. And the first example I want to show is Stitch. They've been around a long time. I've used them many times as a freelancer and as an agency owner. Very reliable option. And as we can see in terms of price, they charge you based on volume of data per month, starting out with 5 million rows of data for $100. So it's also quite affordable. Obviously, it depends how much data you want to load, and you can kind of do the math. The more you load, typically the cheaper it will be to load. Um, and Stitch is great for this. They have, as we can see here, many integrations. Um, and honestly, Stitch is probably my go-to option for any data sources relating to your standard databases. So something like MySQL, Postgres. It's a very good option. They connect well. It's very reliable, and as I showed you, it's quite affordable. The next tool I want to cover is more on the premium side of things, which would be Fivetran. I've become a big fan of Fivetran. It's also our go-to ETL provider at Project BI, my agency. It is known and can be a lot more expensive than some other solutions, but it's a very reliable option. They have, I believe, over 500 connections. They're very good at maintaining those connections. Um, Great UI and UX in their product. Their support team's very quick. And if you've got the budget, it's a great option. Fivetran would typically be a better fit, I would say, for mature companies. Those which are really investing in their analytics have the manpower to manage these systems, work with Fivetran and scale the BI effectively. The third option is Portable. I'm just getting to know them, to be honest, but they have a very interesting model where you basically pay them very standard $200 a month for unlimited volume, and they're really big on supporting, you could say, the long tail of connections. So you can see over 1,300 connections. So any more obscure or niche software products that you might be using where you want to extract the data out that aren't covered by Stitch or Fivetran, Portable would be a great option. They do have less, I would say, flexibility here. So, if you have 3 different connections you need to set up, you're paying 200 times 3, and then you still, for example, can only sync the data every 24 hours. While if you want a bit more flexibility, you need to move to the scale plan, which is already, looking at, 1,200, $12,000 a month, a year. It's starting to get a bit expensive, but I still think that Portable has its place in the market. And as I said, I recently spoke with the founder, and I'm getting to know them because it is interesting that they cover such a wide range, and in certain cases, I think they could be a great option. The last one I want to speak about is a bit more niche, and that's glue. Why I want to bring up glue is because occasionally you'll find an ETL provider which is very focused on specific segments. So glue is essentially the Fivetran or Stitch, however you want to call it, of the e-commerce space. So they pride themselves as being almost entirely focused on the e-commerce space. They've got over 170 integrations with very popular e-commerce platforms. You can see some of the logos here, and they're a great option for many e-commerce businesses. I have a good relationship with Glue and have used them multiple times for many clients. And yeah, I just want to give them a shout out. This is actually a new website that I really like. And yeah, if you're an e-commerce business, you should definitely check them out and have a chat with them. So that's it. There are many, many ETL providers in the market. It's pretty big space in terms of number of players. In terms of deciding what's the best ETL for you, it really comes down to, there's actually quite a few variables. I might do a separate video on that. Price is obviously a consideration, loading, frequency of loading, coverage. So as I showed you, portable is 1300 versus Glue has 170, right? It's a big difference there in coverage. So ideally you want to have one ETL that can cover everything for you, but sometimes you'll have more than one. So you'll definitely need to do your due diligence to decide which ETL provider makes the most sense for your company. As I mentioned earlier, there are companies that prefer to build their own ETLs and hire data engineers and build it all in-house. There's pros and cons to both directions. That's it. If you have any questions on ETL, then please feel free to share them in the comments below. And if you did find this video helpful, please consider hitting the like button and the subscribe button. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.